Hello and welcome to Sustainapod. My name is Paco, and today we're here with Sally. Sally is a writer, radio presenter, sustainability advocate, and um, last time we met, we were at the first Sustainapod in-person event, and so yeah. Well, Sally, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
What were you studying at secondary school level, and then how did that go into what you did at LSE, which is politics, I think.
Yes, it was politics. So at secondary school, so I went to the UK for boarding school and I did my A levels in politics, psychology, art, and history. Um, and so that kind of gave me, I was really already limiting myself to the humanities at that point because it is exactly what I love to do. So I knew that when I was applying for university, I was really going for the humanities subjects, but I couldn't really pick out just history or just politics. So I went for subjects at university, courses that offered either politics and international relations or a broader humanities course as well, which is offered at Cambridge. I ended up going to LSE and studied politics and international relations.
Mhm. I mean, you bring up a good point because, well, I didn't get into Cambridge as well, but um, did you think that that really mattered? Because as the time of this recording, a lot of students have just got their offers or rejections from Cambridge or Oxford. So, what do you think about that process? And do you think, well, being rejected by Cambridge was that big a deal?
At the time, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? I'm sure you would probably agree with me. I'm not sure how the other people would have found that admissions process. It is a tough admissions process. It's arduous. You do a lot of work for it. You go to interviews in person. You um, do all the preparation that you can. And honestly, I think everyone who applies and everyone who gets an interview at that point is a kind of you on paper you've got everything that is necessary, and honestly probably everyone has good days and bad days, and you're being judged by, I don't know, maximum 2 hours of your time. And uh it does not reflect on who you are or how much value you hold as a human being. I think at that point when you are 17 or 18, it feels like the most important thing in the world, but it really isn't. I can safely say that after university or even in university, no one cares. Yeah, no one will care that much. You will be judged by how good a person you are, how you treat other people, by achievements that go way beyond your academic. So in that moment, it feels like probably the end of the world, but I can assure you to anyone who's going through that process, it definitely isn't.
Absolutely. And I think when when I got rejected by Cambridge, and I've mentioned this on a previous podcast before, um, it was heartbreaking. But looking back at it in hindsight now that I'm in Imperial, it doesn't really feel that bad. I mean, at I guess Imperial is also a very tough school. I can't lie,
Yeah,
but
it's an
it's
absolutely grateful.
yeah, exactly. It's something about how do you make of your time in university rather than what university you're going to is kind of the more important factor, I think. So you went into LSE, you went into politics. Um, was was that still your love and what you wanted to do when you were in LSE, or did something change in
No,
between?
absolutely. Definitely exactly what I love to do. And I think going back to what you said before about you being an Imperial and it's a great school. Even if you work at a great school, I think when you're there and you immerse yourself in your university, you're exactly where you need to be. And it's about the community you build around you and going to all the courses and electives that you love going to. And you're there to learn, you're not there to come out with a specific degree or think about how your degree might transition you into a specific job. I think when you think about it as more of a transaction that's going to hold you back from taking in a full experience. And no, at the time, going back to your question, at the time I was very into all my courses. I absolutely loved studying what I did. But I didn't necessarily think that that would translate to a specific career or a specific job. That was kind of the nature of my degree though. It's not the case with people who do law or kind of go into engineering. I feel like the paths are much more clearly structured for them.
And I think you mentioned a good point, right? Like, um, when we're talking about Imperial or LSE, like these are both really good schools, even though like even if it was not so great a uni, it really is about like maximizing on what you like and the content. And it's good to hear that you like what you're doing at LSE, but then realizing that wasn't what you might have wanted to do as a career, or maybe there wasn't a really concrete career idea from there on. And I feel like even for me, like someone who's doing engineering who has a clear cut um, career path, it still might not be clear to me what part of engineering I want to do. So then, was there a part of you that wanted to go into journalism during LSE, or was that after?
Yeah, no, it was definitely during my university years. I think maybe by my third year. So usually people, I think it takes a while. Your first year, you're definitely exploring all the different subjects that you're getting into, and you're really just getting settled into the way that university works. It's a very different way of learning than what you used to at school, right? And then in the second year, you're finding your footing, you're doing more electives probably, and by the third year, I think most people are thinking quite far into the future, because you're really thinking, wow, in a year, I'm not going to be here. What am I going to be doing? And that's when you start exploring. And that's when, personally for me, I wanted to do journalism, because I think I talked to you about this. This was a separate conversation about how I actually just by chance met someone who was very value aligned, and she is looking for someone who's a writer. And at the time I wasn't a writer, and it wasn't something I knew how to do, but I kind of leapt into it. And you can learn things on the go. I think the main thing is don't be afraid to stick your foot in and go on to places that um, you don't know or you haven't experienced yet, because when you're young, you can always learn everything but you want to. And I'm sure that if you are double at university, you're already used to that kind of being thrown into the deep end, and you're trying to pick up new skills. And that's exactly what you're doing with any job, honestly. And if that happened to be what you love doing, then it works out, and that's what happened to me.
Yeah, and I think talking about our previous conversation again, one of the main things that you told me then, which I've kept and I've kept repeating to myself over the last few weeks, was that university is just a perspective of life. So I could study this and I can enjoy the course as you mentioned, but not really thinking about the like the career aspect, or this has to be my career, right? This is just a perspective of me looking out. So for someone like me, civil engineering is a perspective for me to see the world, but it's not necessarily my career choice, even though it can be. And I think that's a very important distinction that people need to make.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think uh, looking back, that's definitely how I see university, as it shapes your worldview, right? So let's say if you study medicine, well, it doesn't, of course, a lot of people are asked that they study medicine to become doctors, but um, that's not always the case. There's tons of people who don't become doctors too, and but what that degree helps them do is shape the way they see a lot of situations. Whatever they approach in life, they might view it with a medical lens, and that's the same with any other degree. I would say yourself, you talk about engineering, and you see things with where engineering lens, and you might approach problems in a different way and have a different take than someone else who studied something else. And that is where you bring value. It doesn't have to be you become an engineer necessarily. It's how you take your skills and what you learned and all the knowledge that you have into whatever you go into in the future.
Yeah. I mean, this is basically the same question, but adding on to that, would you have wanted to study something else if you knew that you were going to do journalism?
I think I've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot. I think there was a time where I thought, oh, there are a lot of things that when you have a very solid journalism degree, it helps you you approach sources differently. There are a lot of things that I didn't know on the job that I would have had training for had I learned that in university. But well, I wouldn't change anything that I did because I still got those skills. I think you can learn all these things outside of university, and um, you can always go back as well. Of course, it's really hard after you start working for a bit. But, I know people who've gone back after going to journalism for a bit or going to long distance for a bit who might end up finding, oh, right, I'm at a point where I've got enough work experience, but there are some specific, really niche skills that I feel like I really need. I can always go back. People go back and do journalism degrees. People go back and do production degrees and learn all the ins and outs of what can help them in their job in the future.
I mean, that's something that I discussed with one of my friends, but then there was someone that told them that, um, do you really want to spend 10 years of your life at university? Like, their perspective was, oh, I'm going into university, so that means that's for the career. So spend 3 years on that and then just start working. Like, what do you think about that statement?
Well, each to their own, right? There's certainly people who see university as a gateway, and that's completely fine too. Everyone's allowed to have their own opinions on it. If it works for them and it's what they feel like university does for them, then so be it. It's also, I've met lots of people who see the world that way, but obviously coming from a humanities major, you tend to see everything with a bit more, I hope, optimism, and you look at the value of the knowledge that you're gaining and the critical thinking skills that you're getting at university, and you're applying them elsewhere no matter where you go. And um, as for my course mates, they've gone on to do crazy things and very different. We've all gone into different sectors, and that's because we can apply what we learned into all these different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from that journalism degree, and then now you're working sometimes with RTHK, sometimes writing. Um, what have you found that you loved the most about being freelance and not so much?
Uh, the best bit is obviously freedom and being able to take on projects that you really enjoy, and that being able to pick out value aligned kind of projects. I think that that's definitely something for Gen Z and for even for millennials, and definitely for Gen Z though. Um, Work is not only a part of your salary, but also a part of satisfaction and what you're trying to get from what you do, right? And with Gen Z, a lot of us are becoming more socially aware, environmentally aware. So you're trying to do something as a lower path. And I think that's the best thing about being a freelancer. You're able to take on these projects and meet people who see eye to eye with you on those things, and be able to create something bigger and have an impact together, and also be able to shape your work in exactly the way that you want in some projects. But of course, that being said, the not so glamorous things is, it's a hustle. You have to do everything. You need to, there's lots of deadlines that you need to juggle. You are also trying to handle cash flow, just like how when you are an employer instead of an employee, it's the same as being self-employed, right? You've got to get your finances in check. So that's also something that is, I would say, a disadvantage, but some people really like it. So it's a bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to write about sustainability, and you also do a show about sustainability related things. So, how do you currently stay on top of sustainability trends and news?
And a lot of reading. Every morning, I think I spend about maybe an hour or two reading news, and at the same time, any free time that I have. So if I'm commuting somewhere, if I'm walking somewhere, if I'm doing exercise, if I'm even just like doing my chores on the weekend, I'm consuming news based through audio, which is a great way to consume news and multitask at the same time. So there's really no way around it except to consume as much as you can. But of course, then you also run the risk of um, fatigue and trying to also broaden my lens. So if you tell to stop to certain types of media, challenge yourself and choose media that is tough to consume for you. So sometimes I know I lean more on the progressive side of things. So if I'm looking at the US election, which is really related to sustainability, but also, the laws that come into the US and what they approve is the Environmental Protection Agency and kind of the regulation that they have in the US, like also the sustainability related. But anyway, all that aside, if I tend to steer on the progressive end, challenge yourself and consume something that tends to be a little right wing side and let yourself face the opposite view and hear them out. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, here at Sustainapod, we have the idea that maybe students don't have that much exposure to sustainability related news or trends. But as you're putting it, there probably is a lot of media coverage on it, but we just have to find it. So I guess my next question would be, are there any frustrations or challenges that you face as a barrier of entry to you accessing sustainability news? Or maybe more specifically, a secondary or university student for them to access sustainability news?
yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the time, everyone's kind of focused on mainstream media, and unless you're seeking it out, it's very hard to get into the right channels. I think the sustainability industry, we are caught in a bubble. We always think that everyone knows what we're talking about, but that's just not the case. We are a small sector, and we know what's going on because it's us and maybe a handful of other people consistently talking about these things, and we bounce off each other. But then sometimes you go into another sector and we talk about these things and they have no clue what we're on about. And that's just the reality of things. It's not just for secondary school students and university students. It's also for people who are quite far into their careers as well. It's very hard for them to tap into sustainability news. It is a frustrating process. I think it just takes awareness and it takes the conversations. I think the last time we had a sustainable workshop, it was about having meaningful conversations about sustainability. And I think that's really where we can push the agenda forward, is when you have these everyday conversations and build it into the dinner table topics. Like, we're not just talking about politics, we're not just talking about partner affairs, we're also talking about sustainability because it affects us just the same, and it's a global issue and it needs to be tackled. So that's my frustration with it. As a solution, I don't think there is one solution, but definitely bringing meaningful conversations into the mix would be one of them.
Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned about storytelling, and storytelling is very important. I mean, the whole idea behind Sustainapod was that we get young people to talk to industry professionals, and one of the important things about that is storytelling. And trying to make a good podcast means I want to tell a good story, not a good conversation. I think there's a difference. Like, I don't want a good interview, I want a good story. Um, and one of the ideas that we have as Sustainapod is we're trying to build a website, and we're currently hopefully when this is published, we are either still in it, or we finished the process. But we are in Imperial College's um, climate and entrepreneurship club's climate pre-accelerated competition, and we're making a website which is probably www.sustainapod.co.uk, because we already own that name. And our idea behind it is we want to make news more accessible. So we have a bunch of features lined up. It will also be a platform where people can volunteer for Sustainapod or volunteer with Sustainapod to do other things. And yeah, so I think that's what we're trying to do. Bringing news and collate news, condense news, so that it's personalized and that it's something that they would want to see because, as you know, probably sustainability news isn't always the most accessible. It's sometimes it's a lot of numbers, like it's a lot of numbers that we don't really care about. For example, maybe it's a 1 degree increase, but what does that mean? But if I told you something happened in Hong Kong at this time and it was related to that 1 degree increase, then you might care a bit more. So, do you have any thoughts about the solution of how this website could bring about features to help people be more aware and more concerned about sustainability?
Yeah, definitely what you mentioned about how it affects people's everyday lives, how it can change their lives because people like things to stay the same. So, um, kind of giving them a visualization of what is happening to the world and how it's going to affect everything from what they eat to how they sleep to how they travel, and everything comes into the mix. So it can be everything from lifestyle based to something very scientific. So trying to have a diversity of articles and features or content in general that appeals to different audiences will help capture everyone into this topic, I think.
I think a follow up question to that would be, let's say that the website, I mean, you write on a website too. So, like, from your experience, definitely the information is out there. But how do we get people to be like, oh, yeah, this is an issue. Let's look at it? Because, as you said, you spend 1 or 2 hours a day reading news, like sustainability news. Not everyone has time for that or is putting time into that. So, what can we do to help these people say, hey, I care about it, but maybe not as much as 1 or 2 hours, like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, but that's where things like Vox does great videos and kind of infographics, and that's where TikTok and Reels comes in. I think Gen Z has really managed to be able to encapsulate an enormous amount of information into like 15-second videos, and that's something that I think is actually um really useful, and it's going to be a tool. We need to learn how to use those social media trends and kind of be able to use those tools to capture the audience that we're trying to get and invite them into the conversation.
Are there any features of like a platform or a website that you haven't seen someone achieve yet? Like that you wish the sustainability platform was like, okay, let's do this. And it brought about a feature, but you just haven't seen it been implemented. As in, like, as a maybe not as a news feature, but like an app feature, perhaps. Like, have you seen anything or like thought about anything like, wow, this would have been good if we put this on a sustainability app? And is there such a feature or that you want to explore?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the greatest ways to have meaningful conversations would probably be something like what Twitter or um, X/Twitter, whatever they have on now, when people can just join in the conversation like live. I think the lives bit of Instagram has it now, doesn't it? I think it's really made it a possibility to unite global voices and have them join the conversation. It's just the question of how to get people engaged into it. That's the next question mark for me.
Yeah, I think one central question that we had, and this is one question that I asked two other people before, but we have all this information, and you and I know that there's a lot of sustainability information out there, and people who want to get exposure can get exposure, but not everyone wants to get that exposure, and some people just, frankly, they don't care. So, why don't people care about sustainability, and how can we get them to care about sustainability?
I think the main reason, number one, is awareness. We always have to give people the benefit of the doubt and come from a point of compassion. I always say this, come from a point of compassion and empathy. Um, I realize that not everyone knows what we do. This is not information that is taught enough in schools, if at all. Um, a lot of people just don't know this, especially there's a generational divide. There are people who just were brought up with a completely different culture and a completely different way of doing things. And this information then causes disruption to people's lives. I think that's the biggest issue. It's constant disruption, and people don't like disruption. People don't like having to face the reality of the fact that if what I'm doing right now is causing this, I will have to change what I'm doing right now in order to stop it. I think this is one of the biggest issues that sustainability has today, is basically having to grapple with the fact that there are meaningful ways to change our lives and transform it, but it's going to take work. And I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around. It's one thing to say that you, for example, I'm passionate about plastic pollution, but I really love seafood, so therefore I'm going to continue eating seafood, which contributes to the industry that is actually the biggest driver of plastic pollution in the ocean, because I like this one thing, but I'm supposedly passionate about plastic pollution, and therefore I've cut out all single-use plastics from my life. I think it's a lot of this one or the other thing going on. Telling a blind eye to one thing, and I'm really not sure how to get over this hurdle yet. I'm still grappling with it myself. Through years and years of writing and doing shows and getting the message across, I haven't been able to convince that many people. I'm not going to be I'm gonna be transparent about it. It's a really tough and arduous job for anyone who does environmental journalism. And I think the only solution, until we find something that speaks to people, is to just keep trying.
Absolutely. I think one last thing before we end is, I mean, two last things actually, but the second last thing would be, I won't lie, it's hard for me to walk the walk. I mean, you mentioned it last time, like you have to walk the walk if you do something in sustainability. And even co-founding something like Sustainapod, I don't walk the walk. Like, I'll be honest, I don't walk the walk, and maybe that's because I see more of the sustainability side of perhaps something like concrete or something in the energy sector or the engineering sector, and see how removing a slice of concrete off a slab, or just not building that, would have a much larger impact than something as small as reusing plastics or of the sort. And there is data for that, but I guess that shouldn't hinder me from not using single use plastics and all the other stuff that is also important. So I guess, how do we walk the walk? And it's hard to make drastic leaps as well, right? Like, we can't say, okay, I'm going to cut out all um all meat that is affecting our environment or of the sort. Like, it takes steps. So what is your advice for people who want to take these steps?
I think for people who want to take a step, the most important thing really is, number one, just do as much as you can. I think that's step one. Number two is being really frank, open, and honest about what you're doing. If you're not wanting to what to say to other people, and being really transparent to other people, this is where I could improve. I know that I have things that I'm not doing yet, but I'm willing to try my best, and also to look yourself in the mirror and be like, right, I'm not a perfect example, but I'm trying. This is like, you can try in your own ways too.
I just remembered this has to be the final question because we end with this every single time. So, Sally, what is one piece of advice that you have for anyone that is entering the sustainability industry or wants to get into the field?
I would say be as proactive as possible. Definitely go out and ask people. It's a small industry. It's still a very small, very little industry, because especially in a place like Hong Kong, but everywhere in the world, sustainability is something that has existed for the past 20, 30 years, but that's relatively new compared to most careers. So it is a path that is not um, well trodden for a lot of people. So go out and speak to as many people as you can. Reach out to people and ask them what you can bring to the table, and don't be afraid to try something new.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Sally, for being on the podcast. Follow us on all socials, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're all there. It's usually sustainapod_GIH, or you could message us at sustainapod@gmail.com. We also have an Imperial branch, which is included for this competition. So if you want to follow us, we are at sustainapod_imperial on Instagram. So big thank you to Sally again, and thank you to our listeners for listening. Until next time.
Appreciate it.